When planning our trip to North America, we had no ideas of immigration. In fact, we only added a visa to Canada on a whim, to see Canada. We had about $3,000 with us, and we were hoping to be able to travel for about 3 months and see how far we got. Arriving in New York City on the 12th of October 1983, we were delighted and shocked by New York City. We were in awe of the high buildings, the lack of sunlight, the incredible hustle and bustle, the traffic and constant noise, even at 3 o'clock in the morning. It quickly became obvious that we could not afford to stay very long in New York City, and we downgraded our hotel past the point of appropriateness, finding ourselves in a kind of brothel where the noises of passion and the comings and goings all night long kept us awake. We then moved to the Hotel Lenox, which in 1983 we were paying about $60 a night, but even that was beyond our budget and we still needed to buy a car. In the Lenox Hotel, we were wanting something to eat one evening, and we discovered that the door handle had become disconnected and we were locked inside the room with the windows nailed shut and the telephone wasn't working. Fortunately, we always traveled with a set of tools to fix the car, and I was able to take the door off its hinges so we could get out of the room to get something to eat. Despite some great difficulties, eventually we were able to find and purchase a 1976 Ford Grand Torino station wagon, which was our home on wheels, and we did 12,500 miles with it. After licensing, registration, and insurance that we got through AAA, we vacated New York City at 4 a.m. in the morning because it was the first time we'd ever driven on the right-hand side of the road in a full-size car and an automatic. Our next stop was Boston. After New York City, we loved Boston. People seemed to be optimistic, energetic, proud, and the city was full of history. After Boston, we decided to head for Canada, and we were blown away by the New England states in full fall foliage. We would not make progress because around every corner we had to stop to take pictures. We had never seen colors in trees like this. We would travel until we felt tired and then find a place in a truck stop or a rest stop along the highway. When it got dark, we would crawl into the back of the station wagon, pull our sleeping bags around us, and sleep on a foam rubber mattress until the morning sun awoke us. There were no curtains for any privacy or to keep the sunlight at bay. When we awoke each morning, we were often surrounded by huge trucks with their engines chugging to keep their goods refrigerated. We'd heard about Niagara Falls and we fully intended to stop and see them, but when we got there, their majestic magnificence was unbelievable, and we spent nearly a week exploring both the Canadian and the US sides, going under the falls, around the falls, and doing everything except going over the falls. Next stop was Toronto, where we met up with Jocelyn, a friend and colleague of Glynis's back from Cape Town days. She told us about jobs available for speech pathologists in Canada. We loved Toronto. It just seemed like such a civilized, welcoming, lovely place compared to New York City and Boston. Davine, another friend and colleague of Glynis's, invited us to stay with her in Kingston for as long as we needed. We spent some time exploring that lovely part of the world, and one day driving between Port Hope and Gananoque as Glynis applied for jobs as a speech pathologist in Canada. Glynis was offered jobs in both Gananoque and Port Hope, and we opted for the Port Hope one, realizing that we had to leave the country to apply for a work permit, which we intended to do at the end of our continental trip in Los Angeles. With a vague plan in our heads, the two of us headed off into the wilds of continental USA, hardly knowing anybody on the continent, but enthusiastic and excited about our trip, but at the same time feeling lonely, isolated, and missing home. This changed for us when we got to Alabama and we were welcomed into the home of the Craigs, who were the surrogate family that Jackie Parkin had stayed with on her Rotary Exchange. We had a lovely week with them, visiting different sites in Alabama, including the home of Helen Keller and the Alabama Space Museum. Winter was coming and we stayed as far south as we could as we headed west through Arkansas, looking at cotton fields, and then into New Mexico, where we were intrigued by the Tawas Pueblos and we had some snow. It was then on to Arizona and the fascinating petrified forest. The painted deserts of Arizona and of course the big spectacular Grand Canyon was absolutely amazing, and it was set off for us with snow that highlighted the depth of the canyons. We had time to kill before we could join Michelle and Glenn in Santa Barbara, and we spent that time without any money, living in the car on the beaches of California between Los Angeles and San Diego. In Los Angeles, we had made applications both for a work permit for Glynis as well as permanent residence for both of us. We were welcomed into the home of Michelle and later of Glenn and spent Christmas in Santa Barbara, and we couldn't think of a nicer place in the continent of USA to spend Christmas, and had a wonderful time with these good friends. The work permit finally arrived in late January 1984, and we made the long trek across the US to take up residence in Port Hope, Ontario. What you see here is the demise of our beloved Ford Grand Torino. Went on a trip to Niagara Falls with Mark and Sandy. It eventually gave up the ghost and had a broken piston. Here is a picture of the car being towed away to the wrecker's yard, never to be seen again.